If you want to help Myth Vision Podcast grow, you can join our Patreon. There are different tiers, as well as help out with PayPal. Thank you so much. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and comment. Dr. Price, got a comment on YouTube. Mr. FNDZ. Mr. FNDZ. Great, Dr. Bob. Do you agree that the ultimate logical conclusion for an analytic reader is that Judas is the real savior as seen in 3 versions of Judas, Borg's 1944, or Jesus Christ Superstar? By the way, will Horror and Heresies be released in Kindle anytime soon? Please, Dr. Price, I live overseas. Thanks.
I don't know about the Kindle thing. I think it will. My wife keeps up with that stuff. I'm not sure if it will or not, but I'll ask her. The Borges thing with the 3 versions of Judas is really fascinating. And it's too bad it's just kind of speculative fiction. It's just very interesting. I don't think Judas necessarily even existed, though apparently in terms of any savior function. I think the Canaanite Gnostics, who had a gospel according to Judas, viewed him as a high priest offering Jesus as the sacrifice. So that, I mean, it's almost irresistible to think somebody would have come up with that. People have thought, some have thought for a long time, that perhaps he was in cahoots with Jesus to arrange the arrest so Jesus could fulfill his destiny, but they don't go as far as to say that Judas doing so was wittingly part of the plan of salvation, so that he was like the priest offering the sacrifice. I suspect they did. Now, don't we have the Gospel of Judas now? I'm not so sure we do. This thing that was heralded and hooplaed with the National Geographic, I think there's a reason to suspect that it's a modern fake. And it was my friend and colleague, Richard A. Arthur, who was a great top-notch scholar of Coptic and Gnosticism and New Testament textual criticism. He noticed an oddity about this, that for one thing, a lot of the text is derivative from, I believe, the Apocryphon of John. Could have that wrong, might have been the Hypostasis of the Archons, but I think it was the Apocryphon or secret book of John. And that's not too surprising that one text would kind of cannibalize another. That happens a good bit. But he noticed that we have 3 copies of this, as I say, and one of them has a misspelling or some kind of an error in it. And the Gospel of Judas in the overlapping text has the same error. And he said that seems improbable, that we've got 3 copies. One of them has this goof, and this Gospel of Judas has the goof. It seems most probable that somebody was copying from one of our surviving copies. And so he thought that, another thing he thought was unlikely was that some of the sins that are condemned in there, like child molestation and so forth, might have been, like in the ancient apocalypses, a list of sins from the time of the later writer whom he wants to have condemned in an ancient document, and that this might have been aimed at the Catholic sex scandal. I forget what else was in the list. I forget whether it was he or I, but we agreed that on this funny little thing that on the National Geographic show, they were talking to the dream team of scholars who translated the Chacos Codex, I think it was called, and said, is there anybody with enough knowledge of Coptic, etc., to have forged this? Whoever it was, they responded and said, well, nobody I can think of outside of our team. Now, what's that supposed to mean? And Richard Arthur thought that meant that, yeah, he's like winking at you that one of them did. And I then immediately said, it must have been Marvin Meyer. He said, yep. And that's because he's sort of well, he's gone now, so is Arthur. But that he seems to be kind of a wag and a funny character, and that he might well have wanted to pull a Morton Smith and pose a challenge to people. See if you can figure out what's happened here. Another little thing, I believe there's a book on this by Karen King and Elaine Pagels, and they say that if they comment on the fact that Jesus mentioned to Thomas that something about demons, and April DeConnick said, wait a minute, I think you're reading it wrong, because in the time, in the 2nd century, when this was ostensibly written, daimon didn't necessarily have that meaning. It could mean like the genius, the spirit, like the Socrates spoke of his daimon that inspired him and so forth. And I'm not sure of that. You have in the New Testament the phrase unclean demons, which perhaps was not redundant. There might have been clean demons, like spirits that were okay. So I don't know, but that occurred to me. If April DeConnick was right, maybe the point is not that we've been misunderstanding it, but that we have correctly understood what the modern hoaxer intended, because he's the one that confused the meaning of the term, using a daimon in an anachronistic fashion. So he does mean evil spirits, as the context, I think, suggests, but he didn't quite do his homework. So none of this is definitive, but it really makes me wonder if that the so-called Gospel of Judas is the real one known from lists in the Church Fathers.